A meteorite came down from the heavens and turned into a goddess, a giant named Sansona. It remains to this day still a place of mystery, still a giant's construction.
That's a real engineering feat.
The giants of Malta seemed lost to history until explorers recently discovered undeniable evidence of their existence. While digging for a new clinic in Gozo, they discovered a 10-foot skeleton. Dr. Anton Miid was stunned when the contractor called him with the news. Far from the mainland and 60 miles off the Italian coast, this find was the last thing he expected. When will these dormant giants awaken? Join us as we delve into why these giants are on the verge to fulfill the dreadful prophecies that await. Malta's ancient protectors. Dr. Anton Miid, a pediatrician living on the small Maltese island of Gozo, received an urgent phone call from his contractor. Dr. Miid had been hoping that the call wouldn't be about needing more machinery since they were far from the mainland, specifically 60 miles away from the Italian coast. However, the contractor's call wasn't about equipment at all. Instead, he sounded deeply worried, which made Dr. Miid fear that perhaps someone had been injured. After calming the contractor down, he learned that while digging up land for a new medical clinic, the workers had stumbled upon human bones. Initially, Dr. Miid suggested they simply inform the police, but the contractor explained that there was more to the story. The bones belonged to a skeleton that was 10 feet long. Skeptical, Dr. Miid initially dismissed the claim since it was impossible for any human to be that tall. But then, memories of local legends about giants came to his mind, which made him reconsider the situation. Many years earlier, on a similarly chilly winter night in Malta, a farmer encountered a strange phenomenon. He was awakened by a deep, unfamiliar rumbling sound. Curious and a bit concerned, he left his sleeping family inside and stepped out to investigate. Despite the darkness of a new moon night, an unusual orange light illuminated his wheat field, growing brighter by the minute. The sound also intensified, confirming that this was no ordinary event. The farmer, familiar with typical meteor showers, realized this was something different. The object in the sky was large and singular, cutting through the atmosphere with an intense glow. This extraordinary sight was hard to explain with common knowledge and seemed to connect to the old stories of otherworldly events. One night in Malta, a local farmer witnessed a terrifying sight. A large, fiery object sped across the sky, heading directly for his island. He had no time to react or warn his family as the object passed overhead, leaving a blazing trail across the sky that briefly lit up his home, his field, and a nearby valley. The brightness flashed across the island and the surrounding sea, and then, as quickly as it had appeared, the light vanished, returning the night to darkness. As the farmer's wife came outside, alarmed by the disturbance, the farmer tried to calm her. He reassured her that the danger had passed, but she was not looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on something behind him, towards where the object had crashed. When the farmer turned to look, he saw a massive figure stepping out from the woods, a dark, towering form that stood taller than the trees. This giant figure was known as Sansa. When she first appeared on Gozo, the island's inhabitants were filled with fear because of her enormous size and apparent strength. However, over time, Sansa managed to win over the locals. She identified herself as part of the Nephilim, an ancient race, and promised to protect the islanders. During that era, the islands were often attacked by raiders and pirates, but with Sansa's arrival, the islanders felt they had a powerful protector. The islands were scattered with huge limestone blocks, some weighing 20 tons and standing 20 feet tall. For the people living there, who did not have metal tools or knowledge of the wheel, these stones were too big to use. But Sansa could lift even the largest stones with ease. She guided the islanders in using these stones to build large temples. Under her direction, they constructed 30 megalithic temples, some with walls as high as 3 stories. The most famous of these temples, situated on Gozo, was named Gantija, which means giant in Maltese, after Sansa. The Maltese islands, which have been inhabited continuously for thousands of years because of their strategic location, hold many tales from the past. Despite the modern age's skepticism and the passing of time, the ancient temples and the legends of their creation by a giant from a long-gone race continue to endure. These stories and structures serve as a link to a past where extraordinary beings might have walked the earth, leaving behind not only massive stones, but also stories that challenge our understanding of history. The riddle seemed to unravel when a worker discovered a large bone wedged in a rock. Upon inspection, Abella concluded that it was a human femur, except it was twice the size of a typical human's. This suggested that the original owner of the bone must have been about 10 feet tall. Energized by this find, Abella sent workers scouring the island for more evidence. By 1647, he had collected enough bones to publish a groundbreaking book that earned him the title of Father of Maltese History. However, the actual title of his book is often glossed over in tales, deemed too cumbersome to pronounce, especially since it's in Italian, leading to petty bets about its pronunciation. Following Malta's storied past, we uncover relics that challenge our understanding of history, from ancient temples to giant lore. Abella's book detailed various enormous skeletal parts, skull fragments, giant femurs and tibias, large vertebrae, and massive pelvic bones. He asserted that these giants were the architects of Malta's ancient temples. Capitalizing on the public's fascination, Abella turned his home into Malta's first museum, displaying these bones to an intrigued public. Many anatomists and naturalists who visited agreed that the bones must have belonged to giants. Yet skeptics remained, suggesting they were merely animal bones, and argued that without thorough archaeological work, no definitive conclusions could be drawn. It wasn't until centuries later that proper archaeological excavations took place. However, these did not clarify the situation as much as they multiplied the questions. In 1915, a Maltese farmer plowing his field kept hitting large stone blocks. He contacted the director of the Malta Museum, Sir Tami Zammit, anticipating the discovery of more temple remains. Zammit, however, unearthed something unexpected, a massive statue. Although the top part was destroyed, the remaining lower half featured 2 giant legs and feet, indicating the statue was over 10 feet tall. What initially seemed a simple statue turned out to be just the tip of an archaeological iceberg, hinting at more than just large stones beneath the surface. Malta is strategically located in the Mediterranean Sea, 60 miles from Italy and 180 miles from North Africa, making it a desirable spot for various empires over the centuries. The Phoenicians were the first to claim it, followed by the Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, and then the Christians. By the year 1530, a nobleman named John Abella was in charge of Malta. He displayed a rare interest in the ancient temples that dotted the islands, a curiosity that previous rulers seemed to lack. Abella started collecting artifacts and examining old structures, most of which had been neglected and covered in debris over the years. Upon clearing some of this rubble, the sheer size of these structures surprised him, leaving him baffled as to how they could have been built by the ancient farmers of the region. Sir Tami Zammit, while investigating in Malta, came across an impressive statue in the middle of an extensive network of ancient temples. These structures, identified as the Tarxian temples, included 4 large buildings arranged uniquely in a cloverleaf pattern, a design that can only be fully appreciated from above. These buildings were constructed from enormous limestone blocks, some towering 20 feet high and weighing over 50 tons. The architectural skill displayed in these temples is evident in the walls, doorways, and floors, all crafted from huge stones that are expertly aligned without gaps. During his extensive archaeological work, Zamet managed to oversee the excavation of nearly 30 different sites, all characterized by these meticulously arranged limestone slabs. A pressing question that continually intrigued Zamet was the capability of ancient, seemingly primitive farmers living on a remote island to construct such intricately designed and massive structures. One temple, known as Edom Nidra, appeared to be particularly sophisticated, seemingly functioning as the world's oldest known calendar. During the equinoxes, sunlight strikes directly along the temple's main axis, and during the solstices, it hits the opposite axis. While these alignments are impressively accurate, they are not perfect. They are slightly off by a few degrees. Initially, this might suggest a lack of precision by the builders, but the explanation lies in the natural movement of the Earth over thousands of years. The Earth's slow wobble on its axis, known as precession, has shifted the position of celestial bodies and changed the alignment slightly. It is believed that around 10,200 BC, Manadra was perfectly aligned with these celestial events. This period, 10,200 BC, is significant as it falls just after the Younger Dryas, a phase marked by rapid climate changes leading to melting ice sheets and a series of massive floods that reshaped the Earth's surface. Myths and legends from various cultures describe this flood as sudden and devastating, capable of annihilating coastal cities with tsunamis that were incredibly high and fast, dispersing remains deep under the sea. According to these stories, the only survivors were those who lived on higher ground. The cause of these monumental floods remains a topic of debate among scientists and historians. While some attribute it to the impact of a massive asteroid, others believe it was due to a significant solar event. During the early 1900s, when Zamet was conducting his excavations, the scientific understanding of such catastrophic events was not as developed as it is today. However, Zamet was familiar with the biblical story of a great flood, described as a divine act intended to eliminate the Nephilim, a race of giants mentioned in the book of Genesis as formidable warriors of great size and strength. For those seeking more detailed narratives about the Nephilim, the Book of Enoch offers extensive lore. Although this book is not part of the standard religious texts recognized by most Jews and Christians, it holds importance in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and is valued by scholars studying early Judaism and Christianity. The Book of Enoch explores the origins of evil, beginning with the story of a faction of angels called the Watchers. In ancient texts, it is said that God assigned a group of angels called the Watchers to oversee and guide humanity. These angels, however, eventually went against their instructions by marrying human women, an act strictly forbidden to them. As a result of this disobedience, they were cast out from heaven and sent to live in the underworld. Yet their influence did not end with their expulsion. It lingered on earth through their offspring, known as the Nephilim. These offspring were giant hybrids, born from the union between the Watchers and human women, and they caused significant destruction on earth. This behavior led God to bring about a great flood aimed specifically at eliminating these problematic giants from the earth. However, the story doesn't stop with the flood. Ancient writings, like those found in the Book of Numbers, suggest that some giants might have survived. This account is highlighted during an episode where Moses sends spies into Canaan to scout the land. These spies returned with reports of an intimidating land where every inhabitant was extremely tall, including what they believed to be Nephilim. The spies felt so small in comparison that they likened themselves to grasshoppers next to these towering figures. As legends intertwine with reality, a deeper riddle unfolds in the tales of Malta's ancient giants. Malta's demigoddess of the depths. This ancient narrative closely matches legends from Malta involving a figure named Sinuna, which are older than the biblical accounts. According to these Maltese legends, Sinuna was a demigod and a giant who survived the flood. She found herself stranded on Malta, desperate to continue her lineage in the absence of other giants. With no other giants around, she allegedly considered partnering with a human male, although this was highly problematic given the history of conflicts her kind had with humans. This theory is suggested by vague references to skulls found in the area, leading to a hasty command not to focus on these findings, perhaps due to fears of igniting controversy or revealing difficult truths about Malta's ancient history. As the British Navy expanded its operations in Malta, construction projects increased across the islands, leading to a boom in new housing developments. During one such project intended for setting up a large water reservoir, workers accidentally broke through the ground, uncovering a giant underground space. This area, which Sir Hypogeum named the Hypogeum, from the Greek word meaning underground, turned out to be an extensive network of rooms and burial chambers that echoed the architectural styles of Malta's above-ground megalithic temples. The subterranean complex was a mirror of the structures on the surface, with its precisely cut limestone walls, doorways, and slate floors. Zamet and his team were amazed by the magnitude of this underground network, which they soon discovered was only the upper layer of a much larger structure that included at least 2 additional lower levels, filled with well-preserved artifacts. Throughout these levels, a recurring design element was the depiction of a giantess, similar to motifs found throughout the island, suggesting a cultural reverence or mythological importance tied to this figure. The Hypogeum also served as a final resting place, with over 7,000 human remains found within its confines. These remains were traced back as far as the Neolithic period, with each bone carefully documented by Zamet. However, during this meticulous cataloguing, Zamet came across 12 unusually shaped skulls that stood out due to their elongated forms. Unlike typical human skulls, these did not have the sagittal suture, a seam that runs along the top of the skull, allowing for growth and flexibility, especially important during childbirth. Scientific analysis of these skulls indicated that their elongated shape was natural and not the result of cultural practices like head binding, which some ancient civilizations used to denote status or beauty. Furthermore, the absence of the sagittal suture in these skulls suggested they were not entirely human, at least not by conventional standards. This finding was so unusual that by 1920, even National Geographic magazine speculated that the first inhabitants of Malta might have been a race with such alien-like features. Despite the sensational nature of such claims, Zamet could not entirely dismiss them, especially in light of the local legends surrounding Sununa. According to these legends, Sununa was a giantess who could carry large stones in one arm while cradling her hybrid child in the other. This child, a mix of human and Nephilim, a biblical race of giants, supposedly had a skull that could pass through the birth canal of a giant, potentially explaining the absence of a sagittal suture. These narratives, while they enrich the local folklore and provide a dramatic layer to Malta's archaeological history, must be approached with caution. The connection between the elongated skulls and tales of ancient giants and alien races makes for a compelling story, but remains a theory that ventures beyond the established boundaries of scientific proof. Thus, while these discoveries add fascinating dimensions to our understanding of Malta's past, they also exemplify how archaeology can sometimes blur the lines between historical fact and mythological interpretation. The idea that giants once lived beneath Malta's surface in the Hypogeum has always been seen with skepticism, almost tipping into the realm of myths or tall tales. This notion gained a peculiar twist in August 1940 when National Geographic published a striking story about Malta and its underground Hypogeum. According to this report, archaeologists discovered the remains of over 33,000 people, whom they believed were victims of sacrifices by an ancient pagan cult, a claim that is as chilling as it sounds. More bewildering was the report of a school trip to this underground site, notorious for these alleged mass sacrifices. The idea that a school would permit a field trip to such a place stretches credibility to its limits. During this excursion, the article stated The children and their teacher disappeared into the cave and were never seen again. In the following weeks, the sounds of wailing and screaming were reportedly heard from underground, yet all efforts to find the children ended in vain, and they were ultimately declared dead. Years later, a tourist named Lois Jessup visited Malta with friends to explore its historical sites. On a particularly hot day, they were advised to visit the Hypogeum for its historical significance and its cooler underground environment. Upon arrival, they hired a guide named Joe, who led them into the complex through a network of passageways that opened into a cave marked with ancient carvings painted in red ochre. Despite a musty initial odor, the air became clearer and drier as they ventured deeper. Joe shared stories as they walked through the tight corridors, including one about an ancient chamber designed for an oracle known to perform miracles with sound. He claimed this chamber was still capable of such feats if one knew the correct sounds to produce. A fascinating piece of lore, though hard to prove. Exploration deepens in Malta's underground, where myths and historical truths blur indistinctly. Risk and revelation in Malta's underworld. Delving deeper into the Hypogeum, Lois and her group descended into the structure's depths, reaching a large room with unnaturally smooth limestone walls. Their voices echoed strangely in this room, creating a humming sound that added to the eerie atmosphere. Joe explained that this particular room was constructed for a powerful oracle who used specific sounds to perform miracles, turning the natural acoustics into a spectacle of auditory illusions. They continued to a deeper section, where they found a room with shelves cut into the walls that resembled coffins. On closer examination, Lois realized that these shelves were indeed used as burial places. Joe pointed out several slits in the walls, evenly spaced, through which skeletons could be seen. The casual revelation of these human remains, almost as if part of a typical tour, left Lois and her friends feeling both fascinated and unnerved. Throughout their path through the Hypogeum, the blend of historical intrigue and macabre findings left a profound impression on the group. The site, with its deep history intermingled with tales of death and rituals, stood as a poignant reminder of the past's ever-present shadow. However, the way these stories were presented, blending factual history with elements of sensationalism, made it challenging to separate verified history from embellished narrative, leaving visitors in a state of awe mixed with skepticism. The depths of an ancient underground chamber, the tour was nearing its conclusion when Lois, intrigued by a narrow, slightly menacing doorway about 3 feet wide, inquired about it. Joe's reply was cryptic and cautionary, suggesting that passing through that doorway was risky and wouldn't lead far. Yet Lois saw this as a veiled challenge. Energized by a blend of curiosity and a desire to defy the apparent warning, she quickly secured a rope around her waist, encouraging her friends to follow suit. One after another, Lois and 3 of her companions threaded themselves through the small opening, driven by the thrill of uncovering hidden parts of the Hypogeum, leaving 2 behind with Joe for safety. As they progressed deeper into the unexplored chamber, the dim light from their candles was their only guide. The adventure of navigating through unknown parts of the underground complex was precisely the kind of thrill Lois and her friends had hoped for. The tight passageway eventually gave way to a more spacious area, allowing them to stand upright. However, the excitement quickly shifted to apprehension. Upon standing, Lois immediately felt an unexpected lean forward and a sudden cold blast of air against her face. Trying to stabilize herself, she realized she was teetering on the edge of a narrow ledge, only 2 feet wide, with a sheer drop extending 50 feet down into darkness below. This precarious position underscored the risks of venturing into uncharted areas. What started as an exhilarating exploration had swiftly become a serious safety hazard. The ledge on which Lois found herself served as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in such historic sites, where every step into the unknown could be fraught with peril. The safety rope, initially part of their adventurous equipment, turned into an essential lifeline. It dramatically pulled Lois back from the edge, preventing a potentially fatal fall. This incident vividly highlighted the thin line between adventurous curiosity and necessary caution, especially in environments like Malta's ancient Hypogeum, filled with history and unknown risks. Lois's experience in the underground complex was a powerful lesson in respecting the boundaries and dangers of historical exploration sites. The blend of excitement and danger in such settings requires a balanced approach to adventure, where the thrill of discovery must be tempered with a keen awareness of personal safety and respect for the site's historical integrity. This harrowing moment was a reminder that while the call of the unknown is enticing, the risks it poses are real and sometimes just a step away. Deep within the confines of the tunnel, Lois was momentarily paralyzed by what she saw. Her friends urged her to move forward as the narrowness of the tunnel was causing them to feel closed in. But Lois stood still, transfixed by the sight before her. In her own words later, she described seeing 20 enormous figures, each about 25 feet tall, emerging from an opening in the cave below. These figures proceeded in a single line along a narrow ledge. As they walked, their heads reached about halfway up the opposite wall of the cave, highlighting their incredible size. They moved slowly, each step measured and deliberate. Then, abruptly, they all stopped, turned towards Lois, and simultaneously lifted their arms, motioning towards her in a gesture that seemed like an eerie summons. Overcome with fear and unable to move, a sudden gust of wind then extinguished Lois's candle, plunging her into total darkness. This sudden shift from a terrifying sight to complete darkness triggered Lois into a panic. Screaming uncontrollably, Lois heard her own voice echoing off the walls as she desperately told her friends to retreat. They quickly scrambled back to the chamber where Joe and the other two friends were waiting. Despite the chaotic return, Joe's reaction was oddly calm. He said nothing. However, when Lois looked into his eyes, she sensed a recognition, a hint that he too had once witnessed what she had just seen. This silent exchange conveyed a mutual understanding and added to Lois's reluctance to share her experience further. She worried about being disbelieved or dismissed, so she chose to keep the encounter to herself. As the depths reveal their hidden, the line between historical fact and lore becomes increasingly elusive. The vanishing shadows of the Hypogeum. Yet the unresolved nature of the event, coupled with Joe's cryptic demeanor, cast a long, ominous shadow over what was supposed to be a straightforward exploration. It transformed what began as a simple historical outing into a tale of strange sightings and unspoken beneath the historical layers of the Hypogeum, leaving Lois and her friends with a haunting blend of curiosity and unease about the unexplained phenomena they encountered. The shadowy depths of Malta's Hypogeum, Lois found herself ensnared in what felt like a chapter from an obscure novel. Initially, she was intrigued by the prospect of joining a tour led by Joe, her guide, who mentioned he'd soon be taking a teacher and her students into the underground. Eager to participate, Lois left her contact information, expecting to hear back about the tour, but that call never came. Months later, spurred by a friend's suggestion to read the newspaper, Lois returned to the Hypogeum with another guide, hoping to learn what had happened to the teacher and the students. This new guide, however, dismissed her questions with a shrug, claiming ignorance. Lois, still seeking answers, asked about Joe, only to be met with a bewildering response. The man claimed that he had been the only guide of the catacombs for many years and that no one named Joe existed. Disturbed by this contradiction and the guide's somewhat intimidating demeanor, Lois decided to leave Malta, vowing never to return to a place that had once been her favorite. Malta itself is steeped in rich tales of giants, underground cities, and otherworldly beings, blending historical fact with local myths to create a captivating narrative. However, separating fact from fiction can be challenging. The temples of Malta, among the oldest freestanding structures known to humanity, remain shrouded in riddle regarding their origins and purpose. Although mainstream archaeology had dated these structures to no earlier than 2600 BC, later carbon dating pushed their construction back by at least another 1,000 years, yet still fell short of confirming the more fantastic claims of their origins dating back to the Younger Dryas period or their supposed solar alignments from 12,000 years ago. The story of the giant bones discovered turned out to be a misunderstanding. These were actually elephant bones, not evidence of giants. Regarding the underground chambers, while there are tales of thousands of skeletons discovered by Zamet, the reality is much less dramatic. Only about 120 individual skeletons have been confirmed, with no evidence supporting the legend of 33,000 sacrifices. Lois Jessop's dramatic tale, while enthralling, appears to blend reality with elements of fiction. Her description of rooms that do not match official records of the Hypogeum and her reference to the urban legend of missing children suggest her story may have been influenced by local myths or perhaps misinterpretations caused by unusual reflections and echoes in the flooded chambers. This explanation might account for some of her experiences, but doesn't cover all the details she reported. While the underground histories and architectural marvels of Malta undoubtedly inspire awe and draw curiosity, the truth often appears less sensational than the myths. Stories like those told by Lois Jessop contribute to the mystique of the place, intertwining verified historical facts with layers of local legend, making the line between history and myth difficult to discern. This complex mix makes Malta's past intriguing but also elusive when trying to pin down the absolute truth. One of the skulls appears to have been intentionally altered to lengthen its shape, a practice seen in various cultures, often tied to religious or social status reasons. This has led to debates among both critics and fans of ancient history. Were these changes due to genetic variations, or were they done to show reverence to a deity, possibly one from outer space? Supporters of theories involving ancient astronauts believe the latter might be true. Before researching for this episode about Malta's lesser-known tales, which included stories about giants due to their popularity with audiences, the Temple of Hagar Kim had caught attention. The temple is fascinating because the sun aligns perfectly with its structure at the end of the Younger Dryas period, over 12,000 years ago. This period and the Great Flood had been mentioned several times over the years. Did ancient giants really roam Earth? What do you think? Like, comment, and subscribe to join our conversation and explore the riddle of our past together.